Welcome back to part 2 of Easter Week in Real Time, Super Tuesday edition. It's now the end of the day. Jesus has single-handedly taken on the religious leaders and won decisively, beaten them at their own game. However, it has also added fuel to the fire of hatred and envy that they had for him. They wanted him dead, sooner rather than later, even though it was Passover week. Well, it's time to head out for the day before nightfall, back to Bethany. And now the story shifts to an amazing conversation that took place between Jesus and his 12 disciples. This conversation is known as the Olivet Discourse, and it is found in Matthew 24 and 25, Mark chapter 13, and Luke 21, verses 5 to 36. It starts innocently enough. Remember, these guys were clueless as to what was really going on. But Jesus was about to rock their world. Here's what happens. As they were leaving the temple complex, the disciples are admiring the beautiful temple and also basking in the glow of the moment. Remember, in their minds, Jesus is about to become the King of Israel, and he's going to restore the glory of Israel, and they think they're going to become Jesus' right-hand men. So, as they leave Jerusalem, they can't help but admire the beautiful temple complex, glistening in the setting sun. You know, Herod has been renovating the temple complex for several years, and it's never looked better. But Jesus brings the dream boys back to reality in a hurry with a shocking statement. He says, "Do you see all these things? Truly, I tell you, not one stone will be left here on another that will not be thrown down." So they walk on silently until they get to the Mount of Olives. And that's when Peter and James and John and Andrew finally get up the nerve to ask the question that's on all of their minds. All of these stunned disciples are asking the same thing. Tell us, when will these things happen? And what will be the signs when all these things will be accomplished? Well, Jesus doesn't answer the when question. Later on in Acts chapter 1 and verse 7, he would say to them, "It is not for you to know the times or periods that the Father has set by his own authority." But he does spend a great deal of time on the second question. One other thing to note, the disciples did not understand that they were actually asking about two events. The destruction of the temple was so unthinkable in their minds that they thought of it that if it did happen as Jesus said, it would have to be at the end of the age. But it wasn't. You see, the temple was actually destroyed, just as Jesus said, without a stone left unturned, in AD 70 by the Roman Emperor Titus. But that's not what I believe Jesus is describing here. Jesus is describing the signs of the times before his second coming. So Jesus gives them and us some signs of the times before he returns. The term that is used for these times is tribulation. It's a specific time of great tribulation, unlike anything the world has or will ever see. Jesus describes the beginning of the Great Tribulation as a time of increasing deception, destruction, depravity, and discipleship. This is what Jesus says in this section. "For many will come in my name and deceive. Nation will rise against nation, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these events are the beginning of labor pains. Many will fall away, betray one another, and hate one another because lawlessness will multiply, and the love of many will grow cold. But the good news of the kingdom will be proclaimed to all the world as a testimony to all the nations. And then the end will come." Then Jesus describes in the middle of the Great Tribulation, and he talks about a political situation. He tells about the rise of the Antichrist, his political domination, and the false peace treaty with Israel, which he will break midway through the 7-year period. Jesus goes on and says, "So, when you see the abomination of desolation," that's a reference to the Antichrist, "spoken of by the prophet Daniel, standing in the holy place, Then those in Judea must flee to the mountains, for at that time there will be great distress, the kind that hasn't taken place from the beginning of the world until now, and never will again. Finally, Jesus, in the Olivet Discourse, describes the end of the Great Tribulation, highlighting the wrath and judgment of God that will fall on the world, causing complete chaos. More detail on these judgments is given in the book of Revelation, but this is what Jesus says about it. But in those days, after the tribulation, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not shed its light. The stars will be falling from the sky, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. At this point, Jesus begins to talk about the surprising nature of the event. You see, while we can know the signs, no one will know the day or the hour. And he then uses parables and illustrations to highlight the importance of being ready. We can know the signs, just like you can tell when a tree is beginning to blossom in the springtime and we know that spring is near. Jesus is coming like a thief in the night, but His followers can be ready, and they can live wisely and productively. This all took place on Super Tuesday. I told you your heads would be spinning. I imagine that none of the 12 disciples got very much sleep that night. Maybe that's why they couldn't stay awake on the night that they were in Gethsemane a couple of days later. Thanks for listening, and that's all for now. We'll talk later as we give you more tomorrow on Wednesday. Thank you. God bless you.